Welcome to the Fantasy Six Pack. Today, we're going to discuss the Combine. I'm your host, Steve Hungartner. You can find me on Twitter. My handle is IDP Hunter. I'm a writer for the Fantasy Six Pack as well as IDP Guys. I'm also an ECR ranker. But I'm not going to do this alone tonight, my friends. Tonight, I brought in some of the best guests I can find, okay? The first guest I have, his name is Durrell Dubose, and he is part of the OneStopPodcast. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, what's going on, Steve, man? Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you inviting me on, man. Thank you.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Now, question, what do you guys do over there at the OneStopPodcast?
Man, at One Stop Podcast, we're a debate podcast. I mean, what you go into your local barbershops and all that stuff, that's who we are. We're two friends. My co-host, I don't call him Just Bono. He wasn't able to make it on with us today, but the two of us is pretty much go back and forth with each other because we can't agree on nothing. You know what I mean? So there ain't a thing that's walking on earth that we look at and we agree that it's the same thing. And it's not planned, I promise you.
We'll have to bring them back on together. Now, I'll tell you, I'm a one-sport guy. This is really all I do. Like, football's my dojo. I kind of live here. What kind of content you do? Do you do all sports?
Yeah, we do all sports. We even dive into, like, entertainment sometimes, if it's feasible, right? Sometimes if it bleed into sports, we'll definitely do it. Or if it's, let's be honest, if it's a light day within sports, like if it's baseball season and probably not really going on, we'll jump into that. But, hey, that's why we named it the One Stop Podcast, because you can come, you go to this one stop, you can get everything you need from this podcast right here. So
it's like going to the mail. It's like going to the mail, the post office. You get everything all at once. I got you. Last but not least, I got Jillian Miller here. His handle is, I always mess this up, T3 Trunk. Is that what you're going with, the tree trunk?
Yeah, so when I played football in high school, I was told that running into me felt like running into a tree trunk. And so that's kind of the name I got. And I tried to find a handle that kind of used that online without, something that was unique. So that's, 16-year-old Jillian came up with tree trunk, and it just kept sticking.
So this podcast is in for a treat. I've known Jillian for about 3 years now. We play in the most extravagant leagues, which we'll talk about in a second. But Jillian is our Canadian friend, okay? We're a bit international tonight, okay? He's been playing fantasy football for over 9 years that I know of. He runs a podcast, and he's also into analytics, mostly fantasy hockey, right? But you're trying to break into fantasy football, as I'm told?
Yeah, so when I was younger in high school or at university, I did a little bit of podcasting with my mates, mostly kind of similar to Durrell. We just like to argue. One of us was a film guy, one of us was an analytics guy, one of us was just a hockey fan. So we just kind of talked, and we wanted to settle arguments, so we started to record ourselves, and that's kind of where it came down to. Exactly. Unfortunately, we've all kind of gone our separate ways, but I've always loved sports, whether it's hockey, baseball, football, basketball, and I always try to keep up with it. And being a numbers guy, that's what I do for a living. I worked in casinos doing analytics. I enjoy trying to find new ways of strategizing and taking advantage of scoring systems. That's the best thing in the world, in my opinion.
You know what you just reminded me of? I got it on my bio if you read one of my articles. When I was in school, it's going back a couple of years now. Hey, I used to trade baseball cards, comic books. I used to get in trouble at school. They'd be like, hey, don't do that stuff. You're wasting your time. Looks like I didn't waste my time, Teach. I'm doing this as a podcast now. But that's the fun you got to bring back. And I'm so glad to have you guys. Oh, what?
It's a lot of stuff the teachers didn't know. They didn't know.
And there's so many
a lot of stuff they told us not to do.
There's different dark sides of the moon that you can kind of travel on and see it all comes together. Jillian is also with me on Reddit. We found this Discord, which is it's one of the biggest active IDP Discords right now going on. It's hopping. If anybody wants and has an interest, it's a free Discord. Let me know. Put some comments down on the YouTube channel, and I'll find it for you. But it's called the Fantasy Football IDP Center. Julian has an article. I don't want to put you on the spot, but he has a brilliant article he's writing over there at Reddit. But a lot of people don't notice behind the scenes of Reddit, there's a Discord. A lot of us are on there, and we all talk. So I thank you for that, Julian. Julian, last but not least, can you tell us a little bit about what you do over there at Devi 2 Dynasty?
Oh yeah, so it's a new thing. It's mostly just behind the scenes. There's a lovely film reviewer by the name of Brandon Lejeune. He's created a Discord or a Slack app, I guess, technically, of a bunch of like-minded people kind of focusing on Devy assets in fantasy football. For those that don't know, that's kind of developmental assets. So it's college players, kind of like a farm system that you draft, and they come up to your team as they get drafted into the NFL. And I've been trying to help him with a little bit of helping with the mock drafts and whatever else I can. There's a bunch of really good people on there, like Corey Piera. I screwed up, but
yeah.
But yeah, Britt Sanders. But generally speaking, it's a bunch of really good people who are just talking dynasty football and trying to find the next big thing, next Puka Nacua that's going to come through the grapevine.
So I think I know. Oh, what's that? What
I was saying that little nugget that nobody finds. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
I was just going to say that. Yeah, I bet you just being in a Devy like that, you have such an advantage. What's the craziest league that you're in right now that you could think of?
Off the top of my head, probably one of the C2C leagues. I do a couple with some of the people who break content, and it's always fun because you're going 60 players deep into college, and being a Canadian, it's not necessarily easy to find college film or playing on TV. So it's always fun to try to challenge myself against these people. I love the deeper leagues, the IDP, salary cap, 72-man roster kind of leagues. The deeper, the better, because it challenges who you are and your strategy and your ability to adapt.
Durrell just turned gray a little bit when you said salary cap 32. What about you, buddy? What's your craziest league right now you're playing in, Durrell?
Listen, you guys are like, y'all crazy with it. With me, again, I'm still looking to get into a 2-quarterback league, and I'm pretty sure y'all gonna get me into that. So we're gonna work on that.
Oh yeah,
all of us together. But for me, mine are the basic like fantasy football league, but it's probably the most competitive league like you would ever want to be in. I'm talking about no one half what it. Everybody shows up to the point where 5-5 can probably get you in the playoffs, like going into like a good even number can get you in simply because it's that competitive. Like a losing record, like if you got a winning record in that league, that means you got some really good breaks. Let's be honest, because it's that
those
competitive.
are the best ones when people are running after you trying to kill you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And we put a cap on the waiver wire too, because people go nuts. People go nuts on the waiver wire. So we got to think as most you can do on the waiver wire is 15. After you run out of your 15 and you ain't got nobody, you're stuck. That's it for you. That's it. But not super competitive.
So in regards to competition and the combine we just experienced, I got a couple questions for you guys, and I'm just going to field it to you guys. For the audience at home, we're just talking about the combine today. The people on Spotify, I'm just going to pull up the screen. We're going to pick some of our favorite players. But let's start it here. My first question for you guys. Tyler Owens started the weekend by saying he didn't believe in space. He didn't believe in planets. And then if that ain't crazy enough, we have Kalen King, another defensive back out of Penn State. He took it even further, and he said the moon landing wasn't real. And then finally, later on the night, we had Clemson tight end Tip Ryman. He told reporters that he doesn't think pigeons are real, that they're fake AI birds. So we got flat earthers, we got government conspiracies, we got robot-generated pets. Do you guys want to defend any of these topics?
You go ahead. I want to hear what you say first.
Who, me?
I need to know. I need to know how both of you feel first before I go. So go ahead.
I'm going at the moon landing because I do think there's a little bit of shadiness going on with the moon landing personally. So if you're asking me to go first, by all means, I got a presentation for you guys.
No, let Tree go first then. Go ahead, Tree. Go first. Go ahead.
Let him go. Go ahead.
Oh, myself? I think at the end of the day, everyone is entitled to an opinion. However,
he's going the safe route.
He's going the safe route. Not the PC route. Go ahead.
Don't worry. I prepared for this. I definitely.
So did I.
everyone is prepared for. Everyone is allowed their opinion. I do think the hottest take was the birds don't exist. Out of the three of them, that was the one that I didn't know how to respond or what to look at. Rip from Illinois, like he just that's a new one. I've never heard that one, to be honest.
Do you believe in any of that, though?
I don't think so.
Okay, I believe in this moon landing. The more I think about it, Durrell, look at this right here. Okay, Exhibit A. Exhibit A for my audience. This is 1969, the moon landing, right? You don't have a color TV yet. You don't have satellite. We don't even have cable TV, but yet we got a transmission from space. Okay. Let's go on to Exhibit 2 here. There's an American flag waving on the TV. You see that all the time. They're bouncing around, right? How do we got wind in space? There's no vacuum in space. See, look, they're all at the bottom there. I'm convincing them. Let me give you my third talking point. What's in space? Stars, right? What's in this picture? It's all black. Where are the stars at, man? Where are those stars? And last but not least, Jillian, we got shadows. We got light. There ain't no sun. Shouldn't it be on the opposite side of this? So in conclusion, we may be on space now, but this is a fake in my opinion. So I'm with Tyler Owens on this. Tyler Owens had one hell of a combine, but he injured himself at the 40, and he may have been government. He may have been government taken out because he's on to something here. What says you, Julian? Or Durrell? What says you guys?
Okay, so I go here. So I thought I was gonna be on the island by myself. And Steve, I appreciate you. That's how I wanted you guys to go. All right. So the bird thing is nuts. I'm not going with the AI and the bird stuff. That's nuts. We're not doing that. No, we just can't. Not at this point in time. Not in 2024. We're not doing that. Now, the reason why the moon landing one is a little shaky to me, right? As Americans, right? We love to brag when we do stuff. You mean to tell me we did something 50 years ago and we're going to wait till now to go back to try to do it again? That ain't us. We do it that one time. We're going to do it better the next time. We're not going to wait that long. So for me, I'm looking at it. Ain't no way you telling me in the America that I've lived in all my life that we did something once.
Before the Russians, mind you.
Exactly. And we're not going to show it off and do it again? Nah, that doesn't work for me. That doesn't. So the moon landing, I definitely think was fake. But chat, you guys can call me out on do what you got to do. That's just how I feel.
I just want to point out the hilarity here that the only Canadian here, the non-American, is the only one that believes in the moon landing.
I got no pride on it.
It doesn't make any sense to me. I've thought about this for a long time. I was waiting for somebody to ask me. I appreciate you for that. Because I was waiting for somebody to ask me. It just don't make any sense to me. Much as I know how much we're prideful like that as Americans. We love when we do something and we do it before others. You know, there's no way we're going to do it again. We're going to have a whole film crew the next time. That's what we do. So it made no sense to me. So
transition. Second question I had for you guys. Another thing I noticed, observation. Caleb Williams, he made a name for himself this weekend. Didn't participate in any drills. He told teams, I'm not doing medical unless you go ahead and test me yourselves, and I'll come do training camps, whatever. His dad, I gotta watch what I say because he's all over Twitter. So you got a helicopter parents, right? You got kids not wanting to do stuff, right? His rationale was if a team wants him and wants to draft him, I'll go to mini trainings and I'll do everything. So I'm just curious what your take is on that because, if that starts to be a trend or not. Do you think Caleb Williams, you think the shenanigans he's doing right now, you think it's good or bad for the NFL? What says you guys?
I'll start this one because I definitely have an opinion here. Okay. I think, generally speaking, that I've heard a lot of different rumors from he didn't like to shower in the locker rooms to he wanted to make sure that they're committed to him by coming to his pro day. I don't care what it is. At the end of the day, there are a lot of red flags here on top of kind of some of the ones he's already created with the 35 turnovers in his career. I think he's shown and said some interesting things about getting stakes, which is against the player union.
Mm-hmm.
I think whoever is giving him advice is giving him some tough advice that is not supporting him and where he wants to go. I really do think that he needs someone in his corner to kind of get him a little bit more of the straight and narrow. I'm not saying that he has to be the same as everyone, but I do think that generally speaking, if you want what's best for you, you need to have a certain decorum. Now, that said, someone also mentioned, and I saw this, and I was a really good rebuttal on some of the threads I was talking, that he's already made $10 million. What's $1 million difference if he goes 5 picks later? And it's a valid point, but there's going to be a lot of people who are cautious and concerned. And the one thing I wish I could see at the combine would be all the interviews. I really like to sit on an interview with Caleb Williams, get where his head is and figure out what he really wants to do. And if he's going to be one of those people who just doesn't focus on football and ends up like a Jamarcus Russell. I'm not saying he's going to follow the lead the same way Jamarcus Russell did, but definitely have the mindset that he needs to push and he needs to win. But that's my personal opinion on him.
Gotcha. That's a good take. It's a real good take. Durrell, you got anything on that one?
Yeah, so I'm not mad at Caleb Williams here, and I'll tell you why. Because what he's doing is kind of what NBA players do, right? He's really bulking like the NFL system, right? Even when John Elway did it a while back, right, when he said, I'm going to just go play for the Yankees, I'm not going to play, I'm not playing for the team. That was against the system at the time. No one was doing that. So I'm looking at it, okay, this is something different than what we're normally seeing, which is why I got everybody up in arms right now about it, right? But with all the information that was coming out, right, all of the want stakes in teams and this and that, I don't read into sources anymore, because when you look at Twitter and everything is like, it's so many lies and like false narratives out there.
True.
Until you show me that his father actually said it, or what agent comes out and said that his father said it to him, I can't trust it, right? So I'm looking at that and I'm like, okay, now let's go to the medical part of it. I get the reason why he didn't want to do with 32 teams. Because first off, if you're looking at how the NBA players do it, 1 through 10 is probably the only people you need to meet with. Because the rest of those teams ain't got a chance to draft them anyway. And to be honest about it. And the fact that we all see when it comes close to draft time, how more narratives come out, and it hurts someone's draft stock, right?
Yeah.
So he's thinking like, I'm not giving you guys a chance to mess with my medical here. I'm just going to the Bears, Washington, Cardinals, let them do what they got to do. If something come out bad between them, then that's okay. But I'm not going to give the Panthers, right? Like, I'm not going to give them an opportunity to say anything because they don't have a chance to draft.
My only concern is, you go to the combine for that reason. Hey, everyone, there's the medical. And let's say 5 years from now, somebody wants to trade for him. It's all right there. It's all to see. We start hiding it, moving it around. It gets to be a little cloak and dagger. It starts to get monopolized. That's my only take. And then the other thing I was going to say to you, with quarterbacks, among anything else, stats don't always translate. We've seen that, right, Jillian? Not only that, but like these throw drills, Zach Wilson a couple of years ago was a phenom. Look how that turned out, right? So really the only thing we have with these quarterbacks to really gauge is those interviews. If you're not doing the little things, the subtle things. And on that note too, let me ask you about quarterbacks. What stood out to you at the combine? Anybody pop out to you this combine weekend, Durrell?
Well, the unfortunate part about when you have a lot of really good quarterbacks coming in, right? When you're talking Caleb and Drake and Jaden, like these kids nowadays, they're realizing how much they are brand themselves, right? So they're not going to do anything to hurt their brand, let alone their style, right? So it's kind of hard to figure out who out of the top guys was going to be something. So if you're going to look at a winner from the quarterback, you just have to go JJ, right? There's no other way around it. He had the best combine when you look at it all around, even when you look at what people were saying. Now, what I am a little nervous about when it comes to him, I really didn't see that pop off in college like that on screen. There was nothing about him that I saw that made me say he's real special. But in shorts, tight shirt, throwing the ball, he looked good to me, right? I mean, you guys let me know what y'all think. He looked good, but as far as the film itself, I don't know. People saying first round now. I need to see pro days now for the rest of the guys, I guess.
Julian, do you see him going in the first round?
I've been on the fence on that. I've had him as my quarterback for the entire process so far, and it's mostly based on his mechanics, because I think when you look at him, his mechanics are flawless when he throws the ball. I do think that not getting the number of reps he needed at Michigan definitely hurt him. I think he's a little bit raw. I would love to see him sit a little bit wherever he goes. So ideally it would be a late first, get one of those teams that maybe can get a Kirk Cousins and hide him for a bit. My concern is that his hype and the lack of quarterbacks in the NFL are going to raise him up the league or up the draft. And then I don't really want a part of him. I would love to see him go late first or in the second, but I want to see him wherever he goes as a developmental quarterback.
What if you see him go to the Broncos or the Falcons, who got early picks in this draft?
That would scare me away, to be honest, because
Yeah,
I don't want to see him
hurt
start. I don't want to see him be put out there. I want to see him develop. I think he needs to get more reps. And at Michigan, he just didn't get that opportunity. There's still some refinement, particularly with the accuracy. He's got a cannon. He's got mechanics. There's definitely a building block. I just think that he needs to work on it.
Durrell, same question. Pittsburgh. How about Pittsburgh or Minnesota? Somewhere we can kind of sit a minute.
Okay, if you're telling me he's going to Pittsburgh and you tell me Russell Wilson is going to go there since he's a free agent now and he's going to sit behind him, I agree with Julian. If you tell me he's going to be a project that may sit a year, we may have some. Even if his old coach want to draft him in LA or something and just sit him back there and maybe use just because Herbert's a good quarterback. We all know he got a special skill if he throw the ball, but is he a winner?
Yeah.
We don't know yet, right? So if you tell me he's going to go and sit a year behind him, maybe it's just him being thrown into an Atlanta, maybe a Minnesota right now. If Cousins don't go back, you have a Justin Jefferson, but still, that's asking a lot for him to do at this point.
Speaking of a project, let me tell you what we do over here at the Fancy Six Pack. I just love being over here. We got award-winning rankings. Okay, we're running a promo code right now, F6P NFL. If you type that in, you get 15% off discount to award-winning rankings. We're number 3 we're number 3 in fantasy football overall. Our owner, Joe Bond, is number 3. I'm the number 4 IDP ranker. We're number 5 in baseball, among other things. So if you guys are interested in top rankings, if you guys are interested in our Discord, if you are interested in our articles, please come over here. The code we're running is F6P NFL, 15% off. We're ripping and running all the time, much like these quarterbacks, much like these running backs. Speaking of ripping and running, Julian, what you got on these running backs?
Yeah, the running back class is really interesting. Overall, I think there's a dearth of elite talent that we've had in recent years. There's no top guy. So when you go into the combine, you're kind of hoping someone kind of stands out from the plethora of backs that could be the top back. You're hoping that someone kind of steps in and says, hey, I'm your top back. This is someone you want in the late first round. I don't necessarily think anyone kind of did anything for that. I think everyone who went there kind of proved exactly what you expect them to prove. Trey Benson was the best all around. Wright was a fast. Corum was good at a little bit of everything, but not in elite athleticism. Although I did like to see his 3-cone score at 6'8". Estime is a little bit slower, but he's got explosiveness. You saw in the broad jump and the vertical. I don't think anyone really kind of helped their stock, but I don't think anyone really hurt their stock. You can make conversations about Allen and not participating. I think a lot of people want to see what kind of skill set he has because he's kind of the wild card, being that he's younger. He was 17 when he went to college. He's definitely a younger back going into the NFL. He's transferring from linebacker to running back. And everyone loves that Wisconsin group. So you want to see that. Obviously, there's Guerendo. Apologies if I pronounced that incorrectly. He is going to be the hot topic because he just kind of came out of nowhere. Huge speed score, showed up in the I believe the vertical and the broad. He had a good sub-7 3-cone. He's always been about the speed and agility. He's a one-cut runner, and he just kind of moves quickly. And then, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, so before the combine, you know, we've talked in other groups. We kind of had it loosely is either Brooks or Allen, dealer's choice. We had Benson as our 3. We had what's his name? Bucky Irving as our 4, and Audric Estime as our number 5. Did the rankings change at all? Did anybody do anything this combine to kind of move it around, in your opinion?
Yeah, so I think the obvious one is going to be that Estime and Bucky Irving kind of take a dip. Their hype train going into the combine was getting pretty high. Bucky Irving, being his size and his weight, running a 4.5 something. It was a 4.5. Is definitely going to hurt his draft stock in a lot of people's minds. I don't think on tape he showed much more than that. He looked explosive, but he didn't look fast, in my opinion. And his best skill set is definitely the fact that he's got great hands, and I still think that he's going to find a way into the NFL. I just think that you lose a little bit of that 3-down hope with him.
Right.
And as for Estime, he's a thumper. That's what his game's always going to be. I think people are going to back off him with his 4 or 7.2, I think it was. So it's definitely going to hurt his stock in that regards, but he's always going to be that guy who pushes between the goal lines.
His broad jump was pretty good too, though. I mean, I know he had a bad, he got a 4.7 40, but his broad jump was 10.5.
Vertical, yeah, and his vertical is 38 is excellent. He definitely shows explosiveness. I just don't think he has the long speed, right? So he's going to be the guy who's going to push the lines. He's going to get you chunk yardage, but he's never going to be the big home run threat. And as such, he's probably never going to get that 3-down back category, but he's still going to find a way, I think, to produce. And if anyone is worried about speed being the setter, Kyren Williams is the current great example of someone who can overcome that kind of speed score and still find a way to produce.
Gotcha. Anybody else in there? You want to move on to defensive linemen?
I'll throw the question to the two of you. Do you guys have anyone that you thought really hurt themselves or helped themselves?
Well, for me, see, I'm a Marshawn Lloyd guy.
Yes.
Right? I am. And for me, if he can stay consistent with catching the ball out of the backfield, to be honest, looking at him run in college, he was kind of like a bruiser, right? I didn't see that he had that much speed until I saw where he ran a 4.46, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't even know I thought he was going to be like a 4.5, 4.6 guy. I just thought he was going to be a bruiser. So if you tell me he can come in and be consistent with catching the ball out of the backfield, that's a guy that I've been looking at, okay, he might be something. I saw a comparison out there that people want to say Swift, a healthy Swift maybe, or Jared McKinnon maybe, but if he can stay consistent, I'm like, he's a guy I'm looking at to possibly make some moves. Maybe at his pro day, give Kato to throw him a ball, show that he can catch it. He might move up to me.
Yeah, and you have to remember that he's coming off some pretty horrific injuries early in his career. Yeah. He was a 4-star recruit. And also his 36 vertical was top 5 in the class, I believe. So there's some explosiveness there. I have him as one of the winners. I definitely think he's kind of creeping up into that 5-6 range for me personally. I think that there is definitely a chance that he can go higher depending on landing spot and what he does as pro day. Because you're right. I think his big question is his ability to block and his ability to catch.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
So moving on to defensive line. I kind of wrote the article over here, so I just kind of want to hype that up a little bit. When I'm looking at defensive linemen, there's a lot of different shapes and sizes, but the metrics that I'm looking for, I'm trying to look at their broad jumps, trying to measure their 3 cones. 40-yard dash is nice, but I'm looking for other things too. Arm length matters. There was in my article, if you guys want to look at a fancy 6-pack, and I tweeted this out, players that can go the 3 cone at 7.12 seconds or less, majority of the time, there's a good historical data that a lot of these guys end up being Pro Bowlers. So what I kind of did is I kind of put all that in mind when I was going through these ranks here. Now, some guys are more obvious than others, so I kind of want to sit on this a minute. I want to give you guys a couple names. Obviously, one of the bigger names that popped, we all know Jared Verse. I mean, obviously, the 4.5 speed, the 40-yard dash, he had 1.6 in the 10-yard split. You know, he's on an amazing trajectory. What's interesting about Jared Verse is his 40-yard dash is the fastest in the last decade for guys with 33-inch pythons, 33-inch biceps, okay, and who've completed more than 30 reps. So for these big muscular guys, he's the fastest one to come out in the last decade. Do you know who the last one was? Myles Garrett. So I'm kind of interested in Jared Verse. We already know this. I'm not telling you nothing new. Let's move on to my other guy here, Dallas Turner. Okay. Now, a lot of people have him listed as a linebacker. He's an edge. If you're playing on sleeper, you can deploy him both ways. Turner's going to be your 1 or your 2 on draft night. He ran a 4.46, which is awesome. A 40.5 vertigo, 1.54 split, a 10-foot, 7-inch broad jump, which, you know me, Julian, I'm all about numbers. That puts him in the 90% range. So those two guys there haven't changed. Moving on to my third guy here, Chop Robinson. You see all the news on him. He was the talk of the town, okay? He was this year's Combine superstar. Not only did he win the Combine, he silenced a lot of his critics. While he did this, he had impressive stats, okay? He impressed with a 10.8 broad jump. He had a 34.5 vertigo. We all know the speed was a 4.48. He did all this at 254 pounds. He should be in your conversation on draft night as your DL4. So if Chop Robinson won the draft, we're going to go look at how do you pronounce it? Laiatu Latu? Sounds like a Starbucks drink, huh?
UCLA, yeah.
Yeah, UCLA, okay. So if Chop Robinson won the draft, Latu didn't lose the draft, if you follow what I'm saying. His whole combine was his tape. He has the best pass rush, the best whatever. All he had to do was survive and prove that he isn't hurt anymore. His medical won the day for him with his 32 5/8-inch arms. He's got a PFF grade of 96.3. He didn't blow up the combine, but technically him showing up and being healthy, he kind of did. He's going to be your 3-4, probably your third guy off the board draft day. I want to share a little more love. I want to go to my defensive tackles here, give you a little Newton's been my guy all year, but he's been injured, right? Let's talk about Byron Murphy here, defensive tackle out of Texas. He had an impressive 1.69 second 10-yard split, 33-inch vertical jump, 9 feet 3-inch broad jump, which measures their front, right? Which measures their moving forward ability. I'm pretty big on the broad jump, especially for defensive ends and running backs. But Murphy may have cemented himself as DT 1 or 2 on draft night. What says you, Julian, about Byron Murphy?
I love the talent and the athleticism. Especially, I love what you brought up about the broad jump and getting that power and pushing up, particularly for someone of his size. My biggest concern with him when I watch the tape is he's 6 foot. It's pretty small for a defensive tackle, but he's got leverage. He just needs to exploit that better. But I agree, he's kind of got that. And I know that you and I have had arguments about this, that Milton Williams feeling, because he's small, but he's energetic and he's got the athleticism. I think he can win in the NFL, but I think he's going to have a hard time doing that. So I think there's going to be a little bit of adjustment period with him in the NFL.
I'm going to throw 3 more honorable mentions at you, and this one shouldn't even be an honorable if you want to be technical. But Braden Fiske has been winning the hearts and minds of people for quite a while. If you don't believe me, look at his combine. First off, we'll go further back now. Let's go to Senior Bowl. Senior Bowl, he switches teams. He goes in there and dominates. He goes to the combine. As big as he is, he ends up running a 4.7, which is impressive for these big dudes. A 1.68 10-yard split and a remarkable 9 foot 9-inch broad jump. Okay, he secured himself the 3rd spot in the vertical jump. So he's getting quick attention. He probably won't be there on draft nights where I want to draft him at, but Braden Fiske is a guy worth mentioning. And another one for you, I don't know if I'm saying it right. Jalyx Hunt. He's the edge out of Houston Christian. He ran a 4.64, 34 3/8 inch arms. Again, those are my metrics I'm looking for. Broad jump was solid too, 10 foot 8 inches, someone to watch. And last but not least, this one may be controversial depending who you talk to, okay? Marshawn Kneeland, some people say he won the draft. Some people say he lost the draft. It all depends who you talk to, but I'm going to tell you this. He had really good day. He didn't have a bad day, but if you look at his combine on his combine totals, he actually beat Turner and he beat Chop Robinson in a couple of these events. Jillian, Durrell, what says you about Marshawn Kneeland? Any thoughts on him?
To be honest, when I turn, it's thanks to you guys that I'm even watching defensive ends and defensive tackles at the combine. In all honesty, because I'm a skills guy. Who really jumped out to me just by me watching is Braden. That's the guy. When I was talking to you, I was emailing you, and I'm watching, and I'm like this guy is really I know it's the combine, right? But he's really jumping off the screen right now. I'm talking about with the cones and everything, the way he was moving. He really showed up to me. So as a man, I had to look again to see what position he was playing. I was like, okay, that big guy moving right there. So that's the guy who stood out to me. So when it comes to who I was really looking at, once I started actually looking at the defensive guy, I said, this guy, I don't know where he was going in the rounds before, but he definitely made himself some money.
So, I mean, this defensive line, particularly the edge draft class, it's the best thing going right now on the IDP side. Probably I'm more interested in wide receiver and quarterback on the offense, but I just went 7-8 names deep, and Marshawn Kneeland's probably the most debatable out of all these guys. What says you, Jillian? Is there anybody I missed or any thoughts on Marshawn Kneeland?
Well, I think you're 100% right about the IDP side. I think the defensive line this year is very well stocked, both on the defensive tackle and the ends. I think Kneeland has kind of put himself back into the middle of the pack. I think he's shown great athleticism. There's definitely some things he has to work on his game, but that can be pointed out to many different people. I think, generally speaking, in my ranks, he's taking the spot of Isaac, Chop Robinson's co-edge. I felt he had for someone who was very athletic, and that was one of his big things coming out of the tape, is that he has a lot of bend. He can be athletic around the tackles and find new ways to win. He really kind of disappointed from an athletic point of view. And if we're talking teammates, the other one I kind of wanted to highlight as someone who's going to move up my rankings is another Murphy out of UCLA across from Latu. I thought he had a really good showing at the combine. He's got power. I see there's now some athleticism to him. He's going to creep up into the kind of that middle tier as well for me.
So I was looking for a tweet that I posted the other day. No one's really talking about Marshawn Kneeland. He had a faster shuttle than Chop Robinson by 0.07 seconds. And he had a faster three-cone than Jared Verse by 0.29. His stats were nothing to sneeze at, but when you put it in context, the dude did sort of go off. But those are my DLs. Those are the guys I'm looking for. Those guys, in my opinion, won the draft. Let's transition to the one that I want to hear about, the wide receivers. We'll take it to the One Stop podcast. Give us a one stop on these wide receivers, my friend.
So I got a question for you guys. Is this one of the deepest? Is this one of the deepest wide receiver class we've seen?
It is for me, Jillian. Now I'll tell you what. Next year, the running back draft class is projected to be like this. But yeah, I'm getting me and Jillian in the offseason, we're getting wide receivers in the 3rd, 4th round that we have highly coveted. What says you, Jillian?
Oh, I think the extra COVID year finally ending, we're seeing a lot of these guys come out. Plus, we're having a lot of early declares from the wide receivers. I really do agree. I think with Durrell, I think this is definitely. Well, I'm assuming that you're going to say this. I think this is one of the deepest classes we have seen in a very long time. Not only does it have top end talent, which some of the recent years have had, but it just keeps going. we're going to see people go in the 4th round that are going to be dynasty relevant, I think.
And that's a good take. As crazy as this sounds, I kind of want to trade away because I don't have any firsts. I kind of want to trade away some seconds and get multiple thirds just so I have more shots at these guys. But yeah, wide receivers deep.
I'll be honest, I'm not even upset that the Marvin Harrison Jr.'s and Malik, they didn't like do a lot of drills, right? Because it gave the opportunity to see the other guys, right? Now, of course, we all know, like by media standpoint, right, who's the winner of the wide receiver, right? If you run a 4.2, like that's going to gain you some money. Now, a lot of people are saying, okay, what comes after the 4.2? He's a little slim, right? He don't have much body fat on him or whatnot. But if you turn on the tape, like the way they're running offenses now in the NFL, everybody's looking for a Debo Samuel type, right? Somebody catch the ball, run a screen and let's go.
Mm-hmm.
I think if not this first year, the second or third year, once he put that weight on him, he can probably live within that. So I'm really wishing the best for the guy because we all heard it. You run a 4.2. If Al Davis was alive, he'd draft you. we all heard it, right? We all heard it. But for me, he was a big winner for me. And Xavier, I'm gonna say his name right, Legette out of South Carolina.
Yeah.
Right. A big body, 6'1".
4.3 speed.
But come on, man. Like, if you tell me, and if you look at the tape of South Carolina, he got some good tape. And we all come on. We don't think Spencer Rattler is the best quarterback to throw you the ball, right? But he was still able to put up some great numbers at South Carolina in the SEC. So for me, those are my top 2 guys. The Xaviers, those are my top 2 guys who are the winners. And for me, who I wanted to see do well, but I think we have to wait and see when he do his drills and stuff at the pro day, because of course he didn't run a good 40 time, but I still think he's a dog. I like him as a person, and that's Keon Coleman. Like, I really think he is a dog. Yeah, the 40 didn't look great, but you tell me what his skill level gonna be on the field.
So let me ask you this, and I'll ask Jillian too, right? I wasn't really expecting Coleman to be like a lights out burner. I mean, if he gave me a 5.45 or something, I would be more impressed, but I wasn't expecting him to be fast to begin with. So he really didn't hurt. In my opinion, it didn't really hurt his draft stock. What says you, Jillian?
I 100% agree. I think that nobody should have expected a massive score from him. Right. 4.61 is not a death sentence. You look at Cooper Kupp, exactly. was a 4.62 coming into his year. I think Coleman, obviously he's not Cooper Kupp. He's a different type of player, but I do think he's that big slot guy, kind of like a Chris Godwin. I don't think he's a downfield threat the way that a lot of people think he is. Absolutely, he in the between the 20s, he's going to go for those contested catches. But generally speaking, he's the type of guy you want to get the ball in his hand and let him do his thing. He's a really good rack runner. He's very good in space. And with next gen stats, they showed in all medium and short routes, he pretty much was top 5 in miles per hour when he was running. It's just the deep stuff that's not his game. He doesn't have long speed. He has acceleration and burst.
I was going to save this for the defensive backs, but like a combine runtime, it's kind of overrated. You guys know who Mike Minter is? Mike Minter of the Panthers used to be a safety like a couple of years ago. He had a decade-long career, and he was notorious for having a bad combine. And where he made his money is that press or on the cones. The cones, the 10-yard split, that's where a lot of these faster players play within that gray area. So you can still have a career. I don't think a 40 time, it's nice to pop out. But there's other positions. There's other events that kind of define where they're at.
And that's what I was saying. He didn't do the drills, right? So that's why I was like, okay, that's what I feel like. That's where he lives at. Like, he's a guy like he's gonna move his feet. Like Chad Johnson's always say, I ain't worrying about trying to be the fastest straight down the line. My feet good. Like, my feet is where my money's at. So if when he get in the drills, he's gonna show you he can move his feet. But I mean, of course, you read a lot of analysts and stuff. People put so much, which is I don't understand in 2024 why we still put so much draft stock into the 40 time when it comes to receivers.
Right.
But it just seems it's the old way of thinking that still have to move on from.
Moving on to tight end, if you're good with it, Jillian, any tight ends pop off to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people are discounting this year's tight end class. I think it's a lot deeper than a lot of people are considering. We kind of just got spoiled with last year's class with Laporta, Kincaid, Myers, Musgrave, Kraft. I think this year has a lot of really good tight ends as well. The obvious winner for the tight ends was Theo Johnson. However, you and I talked about this prior to the combine. I always kind of expected him to do well at the combine and raise at the combine. He's really athletic. I don't think he shined at Penn State because of their two tight end system and because a lot of the run game is such a big thing in Penn State. I would have liked to see him get a little bit more run with Drew Alar, needing pass catchers, but he's a big body, fast, physical, athletic man, and he's going to do really well. I think he's going to raise up tight end boards. I wouldn't put him as the 2, but I've seen some people go as high as 2.
I was going to ask you that. I'm seeing 2 right now. Yeah.
Yeah. I personally can't put him over Trayvon Sanders. But I know that Sanders didn't really do anything to wow. He ran a 4.61 and didn't do any other drills. Was it 4.61? Maybe it was a little bit slower. 4.69. But I think he's a better well-rounded, where I think Theo Johnson still has some areas to improve. But I saw a lot of comments of him to Jimmy Graham's combine. There's definitely some potential there. He is going to be a big receiver. But we also saw other people. We saw Holker screw up the gauntlet and then catch that beautiful one-handed catch, showing off his mitts. We saw Bell catch a one-handed on the back end of the red zone drill that they did. That was just absolutely beautiful, high pointed, one-handed. We saw
Holker has a lot of tape like that. If you look at his game tape film, he has a lot of one-handed, over the shoulder, high point catches.
Yeah, he's got soft mitts. He's a possession guy. He's going to be your big body guy who's going to get you chunk yardage, get you your third downs, get you your touchdowns. He's a beast. He's not going to spread the field. His 4.78 does not surprise me whatsoever. But the guy is just physically gifted, and he has such soft hands for someone his size. He's going to do great. And then there's Ben Sinnott, who's a fan of mine. I really wanted to see his athleticism because that was my biggest concern. I didn't see much bend or side-to-side agility. He came in, he got a sub-7 on the 3 cone. He looks good in the 40. He showed off his hands in the drills. He's got really good body control. The one part I really like about him as well is he runs as a little bit of an H-back. So you're going to see him kind of mix in different areas. I think he rose during this process as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, there's a lot of tight ends this year, dealer's choice. And the way the NFL is now, like it used to be, it would take them about 5 years to develop. You don't really have to worry about that too much anymore. You can kind of plug and play these guys, which is what I really enjoy. We were talking about that offline as well. Moving on to linebackers. What I did on the article, I kind of put a little data towards linebackers. Yeah, the 40-yard time, it's important. You know what else is important to linebackers? Height and weight. You know, where they weigh in at. You know what else is important? Those shuttles, man, the 10-yard shuttles, the 20-yard shuttles, there's general measurements for a linebacker, hence the quarterback of the defense. There's a couple guys that popped off, and I'm going to read them all together. Tell me what you think. Everybody's talking Payton Wilson, so I won't spend a lot of time here. But the 4.43 40-yard dash for a 6'3", 233-pound guy, that's in the 99.5 percentile, okay? He's also the 10-yard splits that he did, the 1.54, that's also in the 98th percentile. If you guys ever want to look at my my article over here at the Fancy Six Pack, you're welcome to it. But I wrote a whole paragraph on Payton Wilson. The other guy that stood out to me was Edgerrin Cooper, okay? Cooper opted out of participating in the agility drills, but it doesn't matter because that 40-yard dash, that 4.51, we were expecting something like that. He's more of a burst, close speed kind of guy. But the 20-yard splits, as I was talking about, those shuttles is what I look at. 2.82 seconds, 10-yard split, 1.54. He checked every box for me. Granted, his whole bag is going to be, can he tackle? Can he put weight on? But he checked every box for me, showing that he can be a strong blitzer next level. Now, I'm going to give you 3 names that some people know, some people don't know. Trevin Wallace, linebacker out of Kentucky. As I anticipated, I've been writing about him all year. I was anticipating him to be a sleeper and him to pop during the combine, and he did. 4.51 40 time, 37.5 vertical, 10.7 broad jump. Those were top 3 scores amongst linebackers in all the positions. So I'm expecting Trevor Wallace to rise up boards. I'm going to give you 2 honorable mentions for 2 totally different reasons, okay, just to kind of entertain the audience. Honorable mention 1 is Cedric Gray, okay? Nothing too great. Hey, he was a top 5. He's projected, whatever. He didn't do anything to mess up, and that's okay for me, okay? In a watered-down linebacker class, he tested okay. He performed his vertical well, 35.5. His broad jump was 10. He ran a 4.64. Consider Cedric Gray when all the top players go off the board. Finally, this is a guy I've been tracking a while. Honorable mention for Curtis Jacobs, linebacker at Penn State. This guy came out of high school highly regarded as a 5-star recruit. He disappeared at the collegiate level. We hear a lot about that, Jillian, with Penn State, don't we? All these positions, these guys just disappear. Tight end, defensive line, linebacker. But Curtis Jacobs was one of those guys. He's a 5-star recruit. He shows up at the combine, biggest out of all these guys, 241 pounds, just letting it all hang out. The dude still ran a 4.58. Awesome. Also, he notched a 10.4 broad jump, which tied for 3rd among the linebackers. You know, the other guy, Trevin Wallace. But those are my linebackers there. Anybody else jump out for you guys? But that was my guy.
You stole Jacobs from me. I think if we've learned anything by watching him and Theo Johnson and some of the other Penn State alumni, they continue. It doesn't matter that they've changed over their staff. They continue to have one of the best conditioning and physical programs at their college. They just know how to turn out athletes and get them in peak shape and get them ready to compete every single week, whether they're on the field or not.
So moving on to, I think we got linebacker covered. For defensive backs and corner, I'll sum them up together here. You know, there's a connection when you're looking at these events. There's a connection to pass deflections as far as a player's attack deep ball. I'm looking at those vertical jumps and I'm looking at these speed drills. That's kind of what I'm looking at exclusively. So, I mean, anybody can be anybody in the next level. I got you. But the connection I'm trying to make is, well, we're going to go right here to Tyler Nubin, okay? Nubin didn't run the 40-yard dash, so this may be a little controversial, but he separated himself from all those tip drills, all of those defensive back drills. He really separated himself from the pack. So Tyler Nubin was my guy. I consider him a riser if he wasn't already number 1. But Javon Bullard, the safety out of Georgia, he was everything with the 4.47 seconds and the 40-yard dash. He's a nickel safety kind of hybrid. That's the expectation on him. I've had him ranked, 4th off the board, 3rd off the board. He didn't disappoint for me. Where Bullard truly distinguished himself was in that open space in those categories. His ability to navigate kind of like tightrope, kind of whatever. I can see that seamlessly transitioning to the next level. So Javon Bullard stood out to me. And then finally, Taylor Owens, safety out of Texas Tech. This is Planet Man, Durrell. Planet Man displayed all kinds of hidden talents. He went off. He was out of this world. Dad joke, pun intended. He was out of this world. He registered an impressive 12 feet, 2-inch jump. He stood out 6 feet, 2 inches tall, 216 pounds. He was doing everything. But in an ironic twist of fate, he ended up hurting himself at the combine. The men in black were there. They got him, I think. I don't know. Do I need to pull the picture up again? There were no stars in space. I don't know. But anyway, everything aligned for this guy. This guy was good. I didn't really have him highly ranked. Did you, Jillian? But he's highly ranked now for me. He's in my top 10.
I had him in the top 10, but it was just barely. I think you missed kind of selling him on the broad jump. I'm pretty sure that was a combine record at 12.2. Either record or second place. I don't remember exactly, but I remember seeing something. There's only 2 people who've jumped over 12.2 or in that area, apparently. So huge, like massive. I also really liked Javon Bullard. I thought he looked really good. He was really smooth, and his pursuit during the cone drills, like you could see him accelerate into the cone, was really, really well done. I think he's going to be a great. I also agree. I think he's a little bit more of a nickel, but he's gonna thrive in the box because of his ability to get to the ball.
So just as honorable mentions, I put the entire cornerback draft class, and this is a good one this year. The problem is most of us, the way our formats are, we don't care that much about cornerbacks. Now, I was on a podcast the other day, and dude loves his cornerbacks. Maybe his scoring's a little different, but I'm just going to name some names that stood out to me. Terrion Arnold, cornerback out of Alabama. Quinion Mitchell, cornerback out of Toledo. Nate Williams, cornerback out of Clemson. Miles Harden, sleeper, cornerback out of South Dakota. Jerrion Jones, another sleeper, cornerback out of Florida State. Cam Hart out of Notre Dame. Max Melton, cornerback out of Rutgers. All of those guys had impressive feats. Again, they hit my metrics, which is verticals and fast kind of ball. Those are the guys, if I had to play corner, those are the guys that I would be targeting. What says you guys?
What's your feeling on Ryan Watts out of Texas?
Who?
Ryan Watts out of Texas.
You're talking cornerbacks, right? Like, I don't care. Yeah. Like, they're dealer's choice to me. Julian knows how I play. In the formats we play in, I punt those guys. They're the last position I take. I wrote an article last year on IDP, guys. A dozen defensive backs I can take and still win with my last pick in the draft. There's guys every year. There's so much turnover at that position. So, like, I like them. I like the metrics. I don't put a lot of effort into these guys. And you know what else I don't? Defensive linemen after like DL 30 to 50, you can punt those guys now too. Just because teams are playing nickel more, they're less valuable because they're on the field, they're doing all this stuff, whatever. I'm after, like Julian, I'm after these linebackers. Like Payton Wilson, he just screams to me he's a 3-down player.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. That screams to me. That's the stuff I'm looking for. In a watered-down draft class, I would probably move up and get a guy like that. But yeah, I don't really have too many opinions on cornerbacks, as you can tell. Julian, any thoughts on that guy?
I don't. I like you. Cornerbacks are kind of a dime a dozen. I do think this class is very strong, especially at the top. I think there's going to be a lot of people. My personal philosophy when it comes to cornerbacks, and I'll share this for fantasy purposes, is there's been a proven study done where a lot of rookie cornerbacks get targeted early, and particularly in the rookie season. So when you play fantasy sports, you kind of want them to get targeted and show off their skills. So I always try to grab a couple rookies because they always overproduce what their value is at that time. But then I get off.
Look no further than Sauce Gardner last year, right? First 5 games, lighting it up because they were peppering him. They were trying to test him. Once they realized he was the man, forget about it. They quit bothering. I mean, 2 years ago. But yeah, exactly. It happened
with Jalen Johnson. It happened with Xavier Alexander, or whatever his name is, Jair Alexander in Green Bay. It's something that always happens. You see them produce first year and then they fade because people start giving them the dues that they deserve. So I always try to grab at least one rookie CB that I could throw in when I need a couple points every week.
Okay, we're going to wrap it up, guys. See our promo code F6P, MOB24, save 15% on our award-winning rankings. With any luck, we'll have Jillian back. We'll have Durrell back. Guys, any closing thoughts about this draft class?
I think it's a solid class. I think it's a solid class all the way around. I mean, of course, I wish the running backs were a little better, but that's the stage of the running backs that we're in right now. If you get 1 or 2 to go in the first round, that means you got a hell of a class. But I think all around it's a solid class. I mean, I don't think too many disappointment when it comes to, especially the skill players and even the defensive backs and stuff like that.
I think there's a lot of depth this year. Generally speaking, this is the type of year I would try to grab as many kind of 2s and 3s and try to take some of those defensive linemen, some of those safeties and DBs, those wide receivers, which are going to go late into drafts. This is the type of year where you can stock up on kind of your back end depth because there are a lot of NFL talents this year. I don't know how many of them are going to be stars, but I do think that there's a lot that can help you in your dynasty.
Yeah, I've been stacking up. If you guys have followed me on Fantasy Football Universe, I've been stacking up on defensive line. You can go a full 2 rounds on those guys this year. So that's kind of where my heart's been. But yeah, edge, the wide receiver, quarterback, and if you guys are liking cornerback or quarterbacks, that's a good one to go to. We have a good defensive tackle class. It's just kind of hit or miss. It's more of a good, not great. Yeah. Guys, tell the audience where they can find you.
All right. You can find me, One Stop Podcast, on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. We're also on Apple Podcast. So just look on those places, the One Stop Podcast. Again, Steve, I appreciate you, man, for having me on.
I appreciate you. Thanks for coming on.
And you'll find me on pretty much every platform under Tree Trunk, any fantasy leagues that you're in, or you'll see me as Fancy Tree Trunk on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it these days. Thank you, Steve and Durrell, for having me.
And check out old Tree Trunk over here. Check them out. We're in the Reddit, the IDP Center, and we're also check them out over at Debbie to Dynasty. One Stop Podcast. I catch you on Twitter all the time. Thanks for coming on. Hopefully I can get you guys on again. We can talk to these guys once they get drafted. What do you say?
Absolutely.
Let me know.
All right, we're gonna head out. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.